I want you to know today that we are visiting Mr. J.C. Curtis in his lovely home. And if you say, well, who is that? Well, J.C. Curtis is one of the icons in the entertainment business, a comedian extraordinaire. But you know, J.C., at a young 92, am I correct?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you
Well,
got a
when you
long
say
ways to
icon,
go. Yeah.
I kind of like the way you said that. So
Thank
that's
you.
where the icon comes
Thank you. As long as I get your approval.
from. Yes.
JC, life is filled with a journey for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of joy in it. We have a lot of pain in it. We have a lot of good times and bad times. I want to know where you started because you're what I call a survivor. Why am I saying that? They don't know, but you do.
Well, I think anybody my age is a survivor. I don't mean that in the sense of longevity. It's just going through what you have to. Now
But where'd you start, though?
Well, I'm going to say most of the people my exact age are my brethren in the sense of they're old babies of the Depression. And during the Great Depression, that was something to have to live through as it was. Now, the Depression was 1929. I was born 1926. But my father and my mother were carnival people, so we lived in carnivals and circuses. So when the Depression hit, and I mean, I can remember when my father and my mother and my brother and I were hitchhiking. We'd be on freight trains and everything, and I would meet guys with actually torn tuxedos, the remnants of a tuxedo and the starched shirt, which was now dirty and everything. And these guys were bankers, and now they were on the thumb, just like we were. I mean, they were rich and they were poor. My father got it into his head when I was 8 years old that he had heard, as most people did, that there was work in California. And we were living in Newark, New Jersey at the time.
Wow.
So he just one day came home and he said to my mother, okay, we had three suitcases, 2 little ones, 1 large one. Pack the suitcases, we're going to California.
Wow. How old were you then?
I was 8.
8.
And when he said we're going to California, we thought, oh, really? What is that? Well, we found out very quickly that meant walking. So we started hitchhiking, and then as we went through the southern states first, from state to state, we would find other hobos, and people would tell us certain things. Because my father didn't know anything about being a hobo, but he learned quick. And they would tell us you could also catch freight trains, and you could cut your time short. Right. But we caught freight trains that went in the wrong direction. No, but they eventually went. In other words, you're going from east to west, but you'd catch a freight train that's going south
to north,
east.
Southeast.
But when it got to that destination, the freight trains there would go west. So you'd be zigzagging backwards and forwards to get there, which was still faster than walking down the highway. Because the highway, I mean, in the summertime in the south, my brother and I would take our shirts off and we would go over and we would break a branch off a bush, and we would put our shirt over the branch and make an umbrella. And we would walk down the highway and the asphalt was blistering up. And at night we'd see a cabin. We'd go and knock on the door, and it would be in the south a black family, and they would take us in and give us cornbread.
And when did you get to California?
We never got to California. We got as far as El Paso, Texas, and the hobos informed us nobody's getting into California. They're stopping the trains, the trucks.
Why?
People don't have. You couldn't get in unless you had somebody out there, or unless you had money and identification that you could live. They weren't going to take you as a burden. So everybody was turned back. Did you see the movie The Grapes of Wrath?
Yes,
Well, remember when they first came into California and they were inspecting and stopping everybody?
Right.
It was just after when all of that flow got in. They said, we can't take this.
Wow.
So they stopped it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then
So then we caught a freight train the northern route back, where we almost froze to death, and starved.
And then
we got as far as South Bend, Indiana, and my father had a brother there, and the brother loaned him some money, and he was going to open a business when we back to New Jersey. So we ended up back in the exact same furnished rooms in New Jersey.
You started from.
Right, and we were there 2 months. My brother Richie had got it and said he wanted to be a cabin boy. And so my father said, oh, sure, anything to get rid of another kid. So, and I was the only brat that was left. So,
Okay. And
so on my birthday, which was March the 11th, a few days after my birthday, I came home, and my parents had moved, but they didn't leave a forwarding address. So,
hoo-ha.
no, but that isn't as bad as you think, because there were so many families, honest families, that left their
At
kids
that time.
thinking
Right.
that an orphanage, they'd
Would be
have a
better.
better life
Right.
for them.
Would be
That
better.
wasn't the case
Right.
with my father.
Right,
He
yeah.
just wanted to get rid of me,
And then what did you do?
Well, I went to
You
the
were-
freight yards, and
right.
I caught a freight train, and it ended up in New London, Connecticut. I learned to ride the rods from my father.
Right.
Because
Ride the rods is the train.
No, the
No.
rods is the belly underneath the train. There's a brace. They're called rods, and you could lay on two of them and take your belt or a scarf and tie your hands around and hold on to that. You got to know where to go, though, because I had learned with my parents. You get pretty close to the end of the train, because as the train goes, the early cars, there's more air pressure and everything, and the gravel spits up, and you're going to get hit by gravel anyway. And if you were riding the top of the freight train, you always went towards the end, because this cinders would come back.
And this is when you were under 10 years young.
I was 8 years old.
Oh, unreal.
And so I got as far as, no, that's when I was 9 years old. This was after we did
Bigger,
the hobo
yeah.
thing. No, this is when they left me.
Wow.
So I saw a billboard that said World of Mirth Carnivals, which I had been with my father and
Right.
mother a couple of seasons. So I went there, and I found a family.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
I've always heard that carny people, this is from someone who just went to the carnivals, that basically these people were kind and caring.
No, they were thieves.
Really?
Yes, but there's honor among thieves. And I
okay,
never
okay.
understood the term honor among thieves until you go with a carnival. Carnival people, they love family. They're as
That's
tight
what
a
I meant.
family as
Okay.
they can.
Okay.
To marks, which are pigeons,
Right.
people outside, they don't look down on them, but they just look at them as P.T. Barnum did.
What
They're
was
suckers.
the first one that you got into? Which carnival was
The
it?
World of Mirth.
The World
That-
of Mirth. I
Oh,
never
that
heard
was a
that
very
one.
big one. There were three. There were the World of Mirth and Jimmy Straits were the two biggest ones,
I see.
because they traveled. They had 40 flat cars, and they had two Pullmans, and they had a home car for the boss, Max Linderman, which had a walk-in safe and everything.
Oh.
Then the concessionaires, they traveled by truck
Right.
and car from city to city.
What did you do in the carny?
Well, I started out as in a knock 'em down joint. There's 5 bottles, and you knock
Oh
'em
yeah,
down
you throw it, right?
for 10 cents,
okay.
but
Yeah.
you can't win because there's 3 lead bottles on the bottom and 2 wooden bottles on the top, and you put them in the middle of the table. And to win at 10 cents, you have to knock them all off the table.
And which you couldn't do.
It's impossible.
I get
so
it.
the guy who I worked for
Right.
would give me a signal. When he gave me the signal, then I would put one wooden, the 2 wooden bottles on the bottom and 1 lead bottle, and the others on the top
Right.
at the end of the table. That way they could knock them off. And then when they wanted to walk around with a prize, so that
Well,
people
yeah, so
said, "Where'd
everybody
you-"
would come
Right.
back. Okay,
And
I
so
get it.
I would set it up that way. And of course, you took your chances, because you get idiots that hit you with a ball. You know, you go to set the bottles up, and they want to bean you with the ball.
Question.
Yeah.
Carny years, then what did you do?
Well, after the carnival years, of course, you have to understand, because of my age and because the carnival isn't year round, it's seasonal.
Right.
So they taught me, and I saved my money, and they told me to go back to Newark, New Jersey, and go to school, enroll in school, sign my own report cards, be my own parent.
Okay.
Stay clean, don't get in trouble, and they won't catch you. And you have to have a story. So they would say, tell them that your mother and father worked on the railroad, and they only come in on the weekends, and if you got in trouble,
I get it.
That's
But
what
what
you
I'm
do.
trying to get to is you joined the Navy.
well, that was after, let me see, how can I put it to you? When I was about 14,
Okay.
I had an older brother that was given away when I was born. My father didn't want babies, so.
Okay.
And so I would go and visit him. He lived in New York with my mother's
Right.
adopted aunts and uncles. And he came to Newark, New Jersey to see how I was living as this kid, and was amazed to see how I got along
Right.
as an adult. And while he was there, we went roller skating, and he met his wife.
Okay.
Then he asked me if I would, instead of living in the furnished room, would I move into a room that they had. So I was with them, and then the war came along, and I wanted to be in the war.
And why did you pick the Navy?
Well, I was always my nickname in the carnival was Sailor. I always wore a sailor hat, and I always wanted to be in the Navy.
Okay,
I mean,
I
kids
get it.
do that. They want to be in the Army,
Right.
whatever.
And
it
how
is.
long did you spend in the Navy?
Well, let me tell you how I got into it.
Oh, okay.
First, because I'm underage, so I can't get in. So my brother's father-in-law said that he had heard that if you had a baptismal certificate, they would accept that as a birth certificate.
Okay.
So I went down to this Episcopalian church with my brother and got baptized, and we told the preacher a different birth date. So that way I was 16 years old, just turned 16, and we put a different birth date on, and my brother was supposedly my guardian.
Right.
He signed, he had identification. So they signed for me, so I went into the Navy underage. So then I went to boot camp in Norfolk, Virginia. Then they shipped us out to Treasure Island, which we couldn't figure out. Treasure Island, what's that? We didn't know that that was an island off of San Francisco that the World's Fair was held on.
Oh,
and
that's
when
right.
the fair was over, the Navy bought the island from the city and made it Treasure Island Naval Base.
Let me ask you something,
Yeah.
because I have read your book.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
By the way.
Oh yeah, I made the cover of the Playboy Laughs. That's me here.
There you go, with the
that
ears.
was Curtis and Tracy.
I get it.
With
I
the
love
ears,
it.
yes.
By the way, Amazon, everybody. But
Yes,
let me
you
ask
got
you
it.
something. You had an accident in the Navy.
No, I didn't have
No?
an accident. I was wounded.
Okay.
But it was you see, when you say an accident, yeah, I had an accident when I went in and an accident went out. The first part was I was standing guard duty after the island of Guam was secured during the invasion. And snipers took shots. Well, I evidently got shot in the back of the leg, but there was no bullet retrieved, and it's just a scar. So to get a Purple Heart or to get anything like that, that has to be a proven thing. If you don't have that, you had an accident.
I get it. Okay.
See, otherwise,
Never
a
knew
lot
that.
of guys, well, because with a Purple Heart, 2 guys could get out of the service if it was bad enough.
Right.
You know, there's always shenanigans.
Something.
There's always guys that went out and get a Purple Heart and get out of here. You know.
How long were you in the service?
Well, I was in the service, let's say, 2.5 years, about 3.5 years. But most of that time was in the hospital. Because what happened was, when this happened, it flipped me over the ship and I fell onto pallets on the dock, and I broke my back in 5 places
Oh my God.
and pinched my spinal column, which made me paralyzed. But I didn't know anything about that. 18 days later, I woke up back in the hospital. Anyway, like I said,
Right.
and so when I woke up, I said, "Where am I?" And of course, doctors and nurses, they have this big thing where they say, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry, we'll tell you." They never tell you right out because you could go into shock. So anyway, while I was in the hospital, my corpsman, a buddy of mine, used to rush me with the gurney, you know, kidding around.
Oh,
He really
okay.
didn't. And one day, I thought he was rushing me, and the gurney had gotten away from him, and it ran downhill. I hit a telephone pole,
Oh,
fell off,
no.
the cast from neck to my hips broke off, and of course we couldn't tell him how it happened because my buddy would get in trouble. But what we didn't know was, we didn't know until a few weeks later, the fall unpinched the pinch of my spinal column.
And you were okay?
And well, not okay, but little. I had to learn over a period of 18 months to
But you
walk
weren't
again and
paralyzed,
everything.
right?
Yeah, but
Thank you. Wow.
that's how I got out of that. And then when I got, while I was in the service, my buddy would always get me to lip sync
Right.
records, and I was doing Betty Hutton and Bing Crosby and Mary
Okay.
Martin. And he said, "But you sing so good. Why don't you sing with your own voice?" And he always was pushing me to sing.
And you did.
Yeah, and then even when we were on Liberty, one time we went into a nightclub, and he says, "I said, we don't have any money, so don't worry about it." So we go in and we order. How are we going to pay for this? Don't worry about it. All of a sudden, I hear them say, "And in our audience line, we have a young man who's a wonderful singer from New York City. Here he is."
And there you
singing."
were.
And he calls me up and I sing. I said, "Thanks, Danny." And it was nice. And he says,
Right.
"You're so generous." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "You just paid for the drinks." So he had told the bartender I was a singer and to get me up.
And that began your career.
Yeah, and from that, little by little, I grew into a singer and got with the big bands. I sang with Jack Fina, Frankie Carl.
And what about, I heard Ed Sullivan had you on 35 times.
No, it was 22, but who's counting?
Okay.
Yeah, well, what happened was after the big band business
Right.
went out, I turned to comedy because I noticed when I was a big band singer that comedians were working all the time, and we
Okay.
weren't. So I just one day sat down and wrote myself an act. Got a partner, and we did that. And then after a couple of partners, and many years, I became a stand-up comedy single. And
Wow.
So
Let me ask you something. I heard from a little bird and the book, I heard that you initiated the first midnight show on a cruise ship that ever was.
that they all do. Well, first of all, I was always into producing and not knowing it, writing
Right.
and directing.
Right.
In my head, I wasn't those people, but I was doing that.
But you were doing it, right.
So,
Survival.
and I watched like they had all these slot machines, and I told them, I says, you really ought to put crap tables on here. And they says, are you kidding? You can't do that. I says, yeah. So of course later, gyroscopes they put on,
Sure.
and then
Right.
the table stays straight, and the ship is all over the place. So we were doing shows, and I said, this is so lollipop. I says, I can't say anything. I can't say hell. So
Oh, you
I
couldn't even say
no,
hell?
I would say
Okay.
one thing. I say, all day, all night, Mary Ann, who the hell do you think I am, Superman? Now, they didn't take out who the hell do you think I am, Superman, but they took out hell. So I had to say, all day, all night, Mary Ann, who on earth do you think I am, Superman?
Oh, so you had to improvise all that.
Well, if I wanted to keep the joke.
Right, sure.
And there was another thing, like I did a Polish joke where I said, these two Polish guys are sitting there, and the one Polish guy is in the doctor's office, and he says, hi, Harb, what are you doing in the doctor's office? He says, I have prostate trouble. He says, prostate trouble. I don't know what that is. What is prostate trouble? He says, I pee like you talk. Well, it's a great joke. I didn't want to get rid of it. So
Right.
I said, I tinkle like you talk. And they let me keep it in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had to do all that. So, and I kept saying, you really ought to have
Another show.
a normal show, a
Yeah.
normal show. And they said, no, we can't do that. And they won't stand for it. And I said, you're missing a big bet. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll work 2 weeks for you for nothing. And I was making really good money. And I says, if I'm wrong, I says, you let me
Right.
do it. And I said, the place will be jammed. I said, however, I have a couple of things that I got to say all during the week. After they've seen me the first night and
Right.
they like me, you got to say, JC is going to be doing
A midnight.
a midnight adult show.
I love it.
And you got to announce that if you're easily offended, get there early to get the good seats. I says, if you do that, it'll happen. Well, comes Saturday night,
Right.
the captain's there,
It's almost 12 o'clock.
and the talent guy, and nobody's there.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
5 minutes to, and nobody's there. And they got the horse laugh on me. And they're going, and they're looking, and they say, how can you be so calm? He's going to be too. I says, they'll be here.
You knew.
And so all of a sudden, 2 minutes you hear this rumble. The whole ship was there. They had to go out on the veranda and bring in chairs. My stage was down to this. Standing here, I had people right here. I couldn't take 2 steps without stepping on somebody.
Wow.
That's how crowded it was. Now, when they finished the program, the guy that hired us, he said to me, Jackie, how did you know?
How did you know?
And I said, I knew because there's a great story. It's a true story. W.C. Fields walked out of Harry Cohn, the producer's office. Harry Cohn was one of the most hated Hollywood producers and studio heads. And W.C. Fields had to argue with him about money and walked out, slammed the door, and said to the secretary outside, he says, that man dies, nobody will go to his funeral. And the secretary said, you're wrong, Mr. Fields. When that man dies, everybody will be there. You know why? Because if you give people what they want, they'll show up.
There you go.
And I never forgot. You give people what they want and they'll show up. And it was such a success. The other ships heard about it. Then all of a sudden, after about a year, every ship, and you know what? That was the most popular thing on the ship. The regular shows were good, but they couldn't wait to get to the adult show.
Let me ask you something, JC.
One last thing, though. The adult show wasn't a dirty show. I just did a regular
But
nightclub show that you did on land.
Or in Vegas.
where
or
you could
wherever.
say hell
Right.
damn, you know.
Let me ask you something. You've had a great run. 92.
Well, a great walk.
Yeah, whatever. 92 years young. If there was a chance for you to have a big billboard right over the city, what would you put on that billboard that says something about the way you feel, about you and life, whatever?
I'm not saying this because she's in the room, but in all sincerity, I would put on that marquee, I owe everything in my life to the fact that I found my wife. And that's not something it's the truth. Because before I met her, I lived a life in and out, up and down and everything, but she erased a lot of bad things.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to meet his wife in a little while.
Would you introduce it to me? I really would like. All of a sudden, I'm doing Groucho Marx. How did that happen?
know. Meanwhile, JC.
Yes, meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Back at the ranch, what would you say drove you all those years? I mean, something had to drive you. I mean, you went through hell and high water.
Yeah, but things happen. When you're orphaned at 9 years old, you're abandoned.
Not just orphaned, abandoned.
You're
That's even
abandoned,
worse.
yes, but there's two sides of it.
Right.
My mother, who had been, a couple of years earlier, had been hit by a fish truck in New York, and she survived all that, but she was never right, and she could be manipulated, and that's why when my father took off and took her, she was, and I found this out later,
Right.
many years later. So I didn't blame my mother. I loved my mother dearly. I couldn't stand him. I mean, he was really a mean guy. When I was an acrobat with the circus, I used to walk around on my hands, and the longer you could stay, that was a good thing. And
Right.
he used to sneak up and grab me while I was standing on my hands and put his cigars out on the bottom of my feet. He was just a cruel man. And so I could care less about him.
Wow.
So when I was emancipated at 9, which I didn't even know what that word meant, but that wasn't emancipation. I became a little man overnight.
There you go.
And there was good and bad to it. Sure, it was frightening, and now I had nobody. My brother was gone. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. And I was without the one thing I had, which was my mother, but
Right.
it was pretty even to get rid of him and the beatings and everything else. So when I was in that position, I said, everything balances out. It's like when I was with the carnival, like I said, the thieves. Well, one of my big jobs was I was taught how to shortchange on a ticket box.
And what does that mean?
Shortchange people when they come to get their stuff.
Wow.
That's how I got paid. And in those days, and you learn different tricks. They were what they call a drawback. All ticket boxes in carnivals at that time, they
Right.
probably still are out of tradition, were about 5 somethings away. Everybody had to reach up to get their ticket and to get their money and pull it off.
Right.
Well, there's a thing we call pullback. We counted out their change and their bills, and when we pushed the change forward, we'd pull back a nickel. So that when they did this and they walked away, there was a nickel. So at the end of the night, back in the 1930s,
Yeah, had some
a
few
lot of
cents
money.
there, right?
Right. And there were also things like, just 4 cents for the Red Cross. And we'd get that. And then you learn to shortchange. You learn how to always count your bills in your hand when you give the ticket. And then by the time they say you're $1
Right.
short or something, they've forgotten the change. Or if they say you're 20 cents short, they've forgotten the bills. And so it's all different
Right.
kinds of ways
To make a buck.
to make a buck.
To make a
I mean,
buck.
they're different. I had many jobs.
I heard and read you were in the high.
I was a high wire when I was.
Please tell me about that.
When I was 6 years old, I had just been a clown for 6 weeks. I was a baby clown because the regular clown and midget, I think he had appendicitis, whatever it was, and I knew the routines. I was just this little precocious kid, and so
sure.
they used me. And then while I was being a clown, I was in the big top, and I was watching the acrobats. And when the high wire workers left, I didn't know any better. I'm a kid. I climbed up, and I had the balance. I walked, and they saw me, and they
Now,
told
did they have a net under there?
No.
No net.
No. Well, I'm a kid. What would I know from nets? So then they went to my father and they said, this kid has talent, balance. We'd like to teach him and we'll pay you. Well, that's all he had to hear. That's booze money. So they taught me how to be high wire and trapeze. And I used to walk the wire over the Lions act where they were going in there with no net. The only time you had a net was rehearsal during the day. But at night, why would anybody want to go and see you with a net? That's not
Wow.
dangerous.
I get it.
So I was high wire and trapeze for a while. And the other good thing was they had child labor laws. And if the cops or anybody came
Yes, I heard
they
that.
stuck a cigar in my mouth and I learned a few choice words and I was a 36-year-old midget.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
If you had one thing that you could change in your life, what would that one thing be?
I wouldn't change anything.
Fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and audience,
Oh, it's over.
Playboy Laughs want you to know
Playboy laughs.
J.C. Curtis, a man for all seasons and definitely a gentleman for all reasons.
All seasons except winter.
God bless. We will see you next week on Pink Lady Presents It Ain't Over Till You Say It's Over. Thank you. I love you, JC.
I love you too.
Friends, as you can see, JC and I are here, but we also have, as you know, Chaplain Dove in at our home over here with JC. Chaplain Dove, where are you?
Right here.
And you have something for our esteemed guest.
Yeah, I have the privilege on behalf of the Los Angeles National Cemetery. We take care of 88,800 who's paid the sacrifice. And we have a special honor that we just started. We just started coming up with challenge coins. And this is one of the very first that was minted. We have just started presenting them to people of note in the community, the mayor, the governor, and J.C. Curtis. So on behalf of the Los Angeles
terrific.
National Cemetery Support
Wow,
Fund, it's an
that's
honor to be
great.
able to present you as one of the very first minted coins ever from our Los Angeles National Cemetery.
So what if I could fool them and let them think it's $100 chip?
It's worth at least 1,000. Thank you for all you've done, and thank you for your service.
So, and this is the burial thing? You said?
No,
They-
actually,
they-
this is to honor people who are
I was sure
alive.
maybe you get one more
Very
coin
much
and you put
alive.
them on my eyes. Well, is
We
that
could
what
do
this
one
is?
on each
Oh,
ear. We
Okay.
JC,
Well, it's an honor. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you for your
Very
service.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Look at that. We have matching goatees.
Yes, we did.
Now we do have matching goats. and matching wine.
I love this part of my program. Own your own age. It's part of who you are. I am woman. I am invincible. I am alive and well. And the world is mine. Well, let me tell you something. The world is someone here who is one of my favorite friends, my favorite star, Bobbi Stamm, J.C. Curtis's lovely wife, who definitely is a star in any person's language. Hello, Bobbi Stamm.
Hello, Pink Lady.
Bobbi, what inspired you to become a performer and go into show business?
Wow, what inspired me? I always wanted to be a movie star, and I wanted to marry Eisenhower.
Wow, okay.
So,
the best
you
of
know.
both worlds.
Right, 1 out of 2, I guess, ain't bad. That takes me back. That dates me, right? That I wanted to marry President Eisenhower. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a performer. I always knew I wanted to be an actress. I always loved music. I took dance lessons from when I was very small.
And what about singing
7.
lessons?
I always sang
Okay.
in school, and I was always in like the special singing groups in school, and I always knew I wanted to, but I never had the opportunity to really do anything worthwhile. The only opportunity that I can think of was when I was in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Playhouse was there.
Right.
William Ball was the head of it, and I kept thinking, after the fact, I
Right.
thought, you know, if I would have gone down there, there must have been some kind of a youth program that I could have
But you
gotten
never
in.
went.
And I didn't. So because of that put my career starting way back till college. But
When did you actually get your first gig?
I actually started when I went to college.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I did little things here and there, but I got thrown a curve because I was, you know, as you go up in high school, by the time you're the senior, you're the big cheese, and you get all the parts and you get everything. Well, my family moved when I was a senior, and we moved to Chicago, where into a high school there were 3,500 kids.
And you were not the big cheese.
No, 1,500 in my class, and I didn't know anybody, and all of them were the big cheese.
I get it.
So I couldn't even get into and they had a great, Charlton Heston and Margaret, all of those people came from New Trier.
Right.
They had a big record of really good entertainers,
So
but
how did
they
you get
got
in?
a chance. I didn't get to do anything my senior year.
Well, I'm talking about afterwards.
So then I had a counselor that was really good because she knew I wanted to act. So she steered me towards Stevens College, which has a huge theater program.
And then?
They had big theater people, George C. Scott was teaching there. Big people were working there.
How long did you go there?
Well, I actually went only 3 years because they have a summer theater that we were part of,
Okay.
and there's a theater and dance camp that I did that. So, but my first
Real gig, yeah.
I guess, was my first summer after college. I went on the road with a show. It was a Mary Poppins
Okay.
adaptation.
What part did you play?
And I don't know. I was Jane. I don't know who Jane was. But anyway, we were in a tent in Wisconsin, and with the storms and everything, but anyway, that was my first gig. And
Question.
then
Go
I was in Chicago.
And what about this picture? Okay.
So then I was in Chicago by then,
Okay.
and when I got out of school, I started my career and started modeling, and I worked for a photographer who did modeling shots, and I started working also as a production assistant for somebody. And so I was modeling, and then I was acting. I was doing shows at a theater that was like a waiver theater kind of thing.
Right.
And then I got my equity card doing children's theater first, and then I did the Broadway survival.
That's okay.
Well, a lot of those people survived for Broadway. The Broadway revival at Goodman Theater of Boys from Syracuse. And that was wonderful. That was my first big kind of Broadway show.
What I'm laughing about and I'm smiling actually in my mind is from this type of performing till this type of performing. Wow! I mean, tell me about Vegas. Am I correct?
Well, this was then I had a stint that I started dancing.
Okay.
Because I was always a dancer, and I was taking a lot of dance classes.
Look at those legs.
And
everybody. Wow, Bobbi.
So I got a job in Montreal, dancing in Montreal, in a club in Montreal. I was there for about a year.
This looked like Vegas to me, but it wasn't in Montreal.
It was. This was in Chicago, actually.
Wow.
And then I came back to Chicago, and I, for a short time, I was in New York. And I auditioned for a bunch of things, and I got in a show as a singer, and I ended up back in Chicago at Magnum Chateau. Well, I went to Montreal, and I was doing a show, and I came back to Chicago, and I ended up at Magnum Chateau as a dancer. And that's when I met my husband, the love of my life, J.C. Curtis. He was the comedian on the show, and I was dancing. I was a little Corrine.
And where was this one?
This was much later. Then I started doing shows after Chicago. We got a job in the Bahamas for a year.
Right.
And we were together 24/7, and that was wonderful. Finally, that was our chance to be together all the time. And when we came back from that, I moved out here to LA.
I just have to show everybody this one. This is J.C. Curtis, which you know now, and lovely Bobbi. I mean, absolutely fabulous. I have to ask you something. I heard the term gypsy. What is a gypsy? I mean, I know what it was in Europe, but what was it here in America?
Well, as you know, gypsies in Europe travel around.
Correct.
Well, dancers and singers that do Broadway shows, that perform in general, they're gypsies because they travel everywhere. I was on the road for a while. When I went to New York, I was on the road. When I was in Montreal, I was on the road. I had an act with my best friend Shara that my husband put together for us.
Okay.
We were on the road all along here, up and down the West Coast, singing and a little kibitzing between the two of us.
How long a career did you actually have during that time? I mean, 30 years you've been going strong? 40 years you've been going strong? Give me an idea.
I would say, probably 40 years. Well, I got my equity card in 1971 or something like that. So I don't know. I don't put years on things.
Bobbi,
just like I don't put years on myself.
I know, but you know me. Everybody out there, you're looking at Bobbi. You're looking at a beautiful lady with a lot of talent. Bobbi, how young are you?
Well, June of this year, I
Yes.
will be 71.
There you go. Age is only a number. I get it.
Yeah. So
And-
I have never kept track of that at all. Sometimes I don't even remember. Since I met you, I do.
You're right.
I keep track. But before that, I didn't even remember my age. But
You look
it was wonderful starting to work with you, doing the first show, and then you've kept it going. It's amazing what you've done.
Question.
It's amazing.
Seriously, though, how has age discrimination affected your career? I mean, let's be open about this now.
Well, I didn't really realize that there was a problem. As I said, I started a little bit later,
Right.
and when I came out here, I was maybe 30, something like that. And I was out walking. It used to be that you would walk around the studio. You'd try to get on the lot,
Right.
and you would try to meet the casting people, go out and meet people. Not the same thing anymore. But I was out, and I met, his name is Sidney Miller, who was an actor. My husband knows him very well.
Right.
And I just met him on the lot, and we were talking, and he asked my age. And I told him. And right away, it was like, goodbye. And I realized then you just don't tell your age. I mean, at that point,
I get it.
when I was 30, that was back in the 80s, and you just didn't tell your age.
Well, let me ask you, has age changed the way you perform in any way?
Nope.
I mean, I've seen you, and I mean, to me, you're just fabulous.
Nope. I mean, I have been doing the splits all my life. Just because I turned 60 or whatever, why should I stop doing what I've done all my life?
But
Singing,
you can do
dancing.
it. Thank you, God. You can do it.
And I am, able to do it. Every year. It's
It's
there's
a
like
lot.
the back and the knees and the shoulders, whatever. But
If you had...
and you keep doing it too. You
Correct.
can't stop.
Right.
I take hip hop every week. I tap all the
But
time.
you keep in good condition. And that's the point.
And
you
when
keep
I was,
actively engaged.
I do.
Yeah.
And when I understudied Leslie Caron in 6 dance
Right,
lessons,
which was fabulous.
6
right.
weeks, I came in to do. I had already done the part, so I knew all the lines. Donna McKechnie did the choreography.
Right.
I had to learn the choreography, which I did in about a couple of hours. And Leslie was sitting there with her mouth open, and she said, "Wow, you picked that up. You've kept dancing, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I haven't danced in 40 years."
Wow.
Now this is Leslie Caron.
I know.
Who, this is how you know her as a dancer.
As a dancer.
But she just stopped.
Let it go. Yeah, she just let it go.
And look what happened. Of course she danced great in the show,
Right.
but you lose it.
Let me ask you, if you could change one thing, just one, in your life, what would that be?
I can't think of anything because
love
I
it.
am the most blessed person in this world. I have the love of my life. I still am able to pursue my career.
Oh, yes.
I
Wait a minute. Did you tell everybody who is the face of the Riviera lady.
I am.
There
I
she
am
is, 17 years, I think it
17
is.
years,
Wow.
Yes,
God
I
bless
have
you.
spent life on the Riviera, reupholstered furniture, that is. But I'm still able to sing and dance, and I still have another career with the Neptune Society, and I have a job, which at my age, who gets a job at my age and is able to bring in money?
Okay,
You know?
what is your next act in life? What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years?
Well, hopefully I'm performing. I mean, it would be wonderful to be doing a show, a TV thing or something.
Right, right.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know, because everything that I've done, I've kind of fallen into it. All of a sudden, I was doing an act I was dancing
Right.
with the company that JC joined us when we went to the Bahamas. And the guy decided, well, we don't need those acts because we got the girls.
Okay.
So he had his wife who sang, and he said, we just need a little comedy. Well, you're going with a comic, Bobby, so you do some stand-up comedy. And I went, okay. And
Good for
JC
you.
gave me some comedy stuff over the phone.
Right.
And I went out and I did it. And I called him afterwards, and he said, well, how did it go? And I said, well, it went okay. And he said, well, wait, now we talked over this whole thing, and
Yeah.
but I said, well, I got laughs. And he said, well, tell me what you were doing. And I said, so then I finished the song, and I had ripped off my skirt, and I had the jacket open, and then I did the comedy. And he said, and you got laughs? And I said, yeah. And he said, I said, but not very many. And he said, put on your skirt and close your top and you'll get a ton of laughs. I'm standing out there with a G belt on and trying to do comedy.
Well, we don't have a G belt, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone out there. But for our audience today, Bobbi will do her special number for all of you. Take it away, Bobbi.
So this is the song that I was just telling Pink about, where I took off my clothes and then tried to do comedy after it. Hit it. Gather around, I've got a story to tell about a Manhattan lady that I know very well. She lives at 5 Riverside, her name is Shirley DeVore, and she traveled round the world to meet the guy next door. Well, there was trouble inside apartment 29E, 'cause Shirley was still alone and was upset as can be. She said, I'll travel the continent a month, maybe 2, and haul me home as if it's the last thing I do. You gotta ring them bells, you gotta ring them bells. You gotta make them sing and really ring them bells. It's such a happy thing to hear 'em ding-a-ling. You gotta ring them bells. So she went to Dubrovnik, and the very first day, she met a guy on the beach who took her reason away. Yes, it was love at first sight, and quite a beautiful scene. She said, my name is Shirley DeVore. He said, I'm Norm Saperstein. She said, are you from New York? He said, that can't be denied. I got a swell junior tree at number 5 Riverside. 5 Riverside? 5 Riverside in New York? 5 Riverside Drive? That's where you live? That's where I live. 5 Riverside Drive? As if that wasn't enough. Poor Shirley thought she'd gone mad when she told her his apartment there was 29F. Yes, she was E, he was F, and they had not even met until she traveled the world to Yugoslavia yet. He'd always been right next door, and she would never have known. If she hadn't tried Dubrovnik, she might still be alone. Well, there's a moral to learn from little Shirley DeVore, who had to borrow $1,000 to find a husband next door. live in apartments, don't just stare at the wall. Open up the door and hurry out in the hall. And ring them bells. Come on, ring them bells. Make them sing and really ring them bells. It's such a happy thing to hear them jingling. You gotta ring them. So ring them. Ring them. Ring them bells.
Yes!
Yeah,
Woo! Wow. Ring those bells. Let me tell you, everyone, Bobbi rings your bells and mine and everyone else's at a young age. Let me tell you, again, of 70.
71,
whatever.
just about.
I
70
love-
and 3/4.
I love it.
Actually, 2 months. Yeah.
You're right. I met Bobbi, and Bobbi did this song in my very first show, Rockin' with the Ages, and she also did the split. And when she did it, the audience was like, oh, and the thought went through everybody's mind, is she going to get up? And she got up herself, and Bobbi has been with me ever since. In fact, you've been with me the last few shows.
Oh, yeah. Well, how many shows have we done? We've done
about 12.
yeah, but the last 2 were really terrific because they were, the one at the Wadsworth was America Salutes Our Veterans.
Yes.
So that was in conjunction with the veterans because, of course, Westwood, where
Right.
the veterans are, which is, of course, because of Dove.
Right.
And that was wonderful.
We had a great time.
Wonderful. That was such a great show.
And then last year.
And then last year we did We Are America,
Yes.
which was also a salute to our veterans.
Right.
So it's wonderful to be linked up with the veterans because, of course, I live with a veteran.
Shall
A
we say
disabled veteran that I help every
shall
night.
Shall we say Bobbi services her veteran for the last how many years?
Almost 41 years.
Almost
in July.
41 years. That's a long
Oh,
service.
no, longer than that. We met in
Right.
73.
Yeah, that's
so
a
we've
long
been married
service.
40 years, but we were, yeah, exactly.
I want
Yeah.
you to know that I am privileged in my life
No, I am privileged in my
to
life.
know Bobbi and JC. Remember, everyone, and I say this with all my heart and soul, it is not the breaths you take in life, but what you do, what they do, that makes your life a success. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank
I
you.
love you.
Love you. Love you all. See you next week. Pink Lady says, God bless.
I'm gonna live till I die.